going to be demonstrating today a new product. Well, it's new to me. Some of you may have heard about it. I have never worked with, or had never worked with it before. I just got my first jar of it, and I'm liking it so much that I think I will be carrying it. So look for it on my website, doodabug.com. That's doodabug.com. And I'm hoping that very shortly my supplier will have it in stock so that I can carry it as well. So look for that. So this is a really neat product. It is quite easy to use, and I'm going to show you just exactly how easy it is to use. It's kind of it's a weird kind of a gel. It's not messy at all. Well, you'll see what it looks like. So anyway, what I'm going to be working on is a handbag, and I'm using this awesome fabric. I just love this. And I'm going to show you kind of what I do with it as far as how I apply the product, and what I have found makes it the easiest. So I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate that for you. I've taken a small piece. This is quilt weight cotton, and I've taken a piece. I kind of have an idea of what I want to do with it. So I've just kind of left it so that I have some, this is a big piece that I'm using. I can also do smaller pieces as well. But I'm going to end up taping this down to my work surface to keep everything nice and flat, and keep it from moving and shifting and that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is this little piece on this one right here is kind of what I want to fussy cut around. So I know I've got this kind of centered, and this is where I'm going to start. I'm not too worried about having a permanent mark around the outside, but I just want to get an idea. And I could have had my whole piece of fabric here and then just kind of outlined the piece that I want as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just choosing to use a fabric marker. This is disappearing. Probably when I put my first coat of Odicoat on, it'll end up disappearing because the Odicoat is wet. So, but this is just going to give me a rough idea of where I need to keep my tape away from, I guess. I'm not really worried about it being too exact. And just for your information, I'm making Baroni bowler. So of course I'm using bowling fabric. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. Now I'm getting this is just masking tape, painter's tape, and I'm going to tape this right down to my surface on the one side. Now the trick to this is the Odicoat is actually an adhesive as well. It can be very sticky. So what I'm going to be getting is a piece of parchment paper. You can also use a Teflon mat, whatever you would like to use. It sort of needs to be a little bit smaller than your fabric because your tape will not stick to it. So it would to the parchment paper, but probably not very well to your Teflon mat. And what I'm using is actually just like everyday parchment paper. Here we go. For the French people can appreciate that, in English there. So anyway, and I do have a little piece that's cut out already. So I know that this is going to not fit. So I'm going to have to cut a piece that's just a little bit bigger. I guess I had that for a different piece, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to make sure that I have a large enough piece of my parchment to start off with. And I've got one side stuck down. I'm just going to tuck this into here. So I know it's along the bottom. I know that it's sticking up there a little bit at the top. Going to get everything nice and straightened out here. And I've got extra parchment over here. Again, because my tape won't stick to this very well and then it won't actually be stuck down to my board, I'm just going to take and trim that off a little bit. And then I can continue on taping. So I can see I've just got very, very faint my line there. And I'm going to get this stuck down to my fabric. And I'm just going to pull this ever so slightly taut. I already know from experience that when I'm putting on my Odicoat, when the fabric gets wet, it wants to stretch just a little bit. So in order to try and just kind of counteract that a little bit, I'm going to make sure that my fabric is just nice and tight. I'm not going to stretch it. It won't stay anyway. It'll just, the tape won't hold. But I'm just going to do what I can and just going to stretch it just slightly. And again, down here at the bottom, I can see where my little line is, just barely. But I know I've got enough of my fabric that it's just going to hold it in place. I've seen a demo with either this product or one very similar to it, and they brushed it on, and that will work as well. But I'll show you the silly but fancy little tool. No, not even fancy little tool. All right, so there. So I know that I want to Odicoat this whole thing. I mean, I could, my line is right here, so I wouldn't have to do all of this. And that's partly why I've done this on here, marked it. So the next thing is my Odicoat. And they sent this fancy little card. Really all it is just a little plastic, like a credit card. And it just has some of their information on it and stuff. But this is what I'm going to use to actually apply the Odicoat. So if you see this, hopefully, it's kind of a weird gel. That's quite a bit on here. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of product, but I'm going to work with kind of some smaller amounts to start off with. The first coat is going to absorb a fair amount of product. And you can probably see that the fabric is starting to move a little bit. It's starting to stretch. It's only doing that because it's cotton and it's wet. It really is as easy as what this looks. You don't have to saturate. You want it all coated, but it's not a matter of getting as much product on there as you possibly can. It's just a matter of get that first coat on as much as you can. Try and smooth out any wrinkles right now. Just because, again, it's an adhesive and it's wet. So it's stretched things, and we just want to get that all kind of smoothed out. On this large piece, I probably did not use even more than perhaps a tablespoon. There. So that's going to be my first coat. Now this needs to dry for 1 hour. Then I can put a second coat on, wait another hour, and then put a third coat on. And the second and third coat hardly take anything because it's no longer going to absorb. Because I've put one coat on here already, it will waterproof everything. It won't allow anything more to absorb. So it's more just putting some extra coats on. So now this is dry to the touch, and I am going to just put on another layer. So again, this is not going to take nearly as much because it doesn't soak in. It just, again, sits on the top. And on this coat, I'm just going to make sure that everything is just nice and smooth so that I don't have kind of ribbons of the product just kind of sitting on the top. So I'm just going to smooth this out really nicely. So this is a piece that I have already coated. I've got 3 coats of Odicoat on there. And the last thing that we're going to do before we actually use it is we need to set it with an iron. Now this right now, I don't know if you can kind of hear that. When it's all done, it doesn't have quite that same sound. It actually is a little bit smoother sounding and feeling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take parchment paper again, because we don't want it to stick. And we're just going to iron this. Just give it a really, really good press. And now it has a smoother feel to it. It doesn't have quite the same texture. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you. It has just a little bit of a sheen to it now. It's really nice. I'm really impressed with it. I'm really hoping that this is going to be my answer for making fabric bags that are, I guess, more stain resistant. I really stay away from quilt cotton because once it gets dirty, unless I'm using vinyl or something like that that can just be washed, I use a lot of leather, so it's very difficult for me to make things washable, and that's why I kind of stay away from cottons. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a really good alternative, and I guess we'll see what happens.